We are ready to continue with consider introduction of ordinance 602 waiving the first reading and consider legislation that would restrict or limit the use of tobacco products and or e-cigarettes in various places. And staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this item is to determine whether to follow the recommendations of the Health and Safety Committee to introduce the ordinance that's before you and to authorize the City Attorney to work with the committee to explore options that other municipalities are using to regulate retail businesses that primarily engage in the selling of e-cigarettes. I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of background and then summarize the provisions of the ordinance. Currently, Brisbane does not regulate the use or sale of tobacco products beyond requiring retailers of tobacco products to obtain a tobacco retailer permit. The county enforces the city's tobacco retailer permit provisions on behalf of the city. Under state law, the smoking of tobacco products is unlawful in a variety of places, including enclosed workplaces, indoor workplaces, including restaurants and bars, within 20 feet of main entrances, exits, operable windows of state, county, and city buildings, playgrounds and tot lot sandbox areas, daycare facilities, cars, whether parked or moving, when a minor under the age of 18 is in the car. State law also prohibits the sale of tobacco products to minors under the age of 18 and from vending machines. State law does not currently regulate e-cigarettes except to establish that the sale of e-cigarettes to minors under the age of 18 is prohibited. San Mateo County prohibits smoking in a variety of places. Enclosed structures owned or leased by the county, except for private residences, within 30 feet from any enclosed county-owned structure, enclosed areas accessible to the public, businesses patronized by the public and enclosed passageways between businesses, enclosed and unenclosed common areas in multi-unit residences, except in specifically designated unenclosed smoking areas, individual units in multi-unit residences, and in county-owned, operated, or maintained beaches, parks, or trails. The county does not regulate smoking in detached single-family residences, in hotels or motels. The county defines smoking for purposes of all the regulations I just explained, defines smoking and tobacco products to include e-cigarettes and the use of e-cigarettes. And the county's ordinances ban smoking and vaporizing of a variety of substances, including tobacco products and marijuana. However, the county exempts from its ban of smoking and vaporizing of medical marijuana in any individual unit of a multi-unit residence. The county also prohibits the sale of any tobacco product, including e-cigarettes, in county-owned and leased buildings, from vending machines and self-displays. The county also prohibits out-of-package sales and distribution of free samples or coupons for free samples of any tobacco product. And again, the county includes within the definition of tobacco product e-cigarettes. Under the county's ordinance, a business may apply for an exemption from the regulations, from all of these regulations except the regulations having to do with multi-unit residences, based on unusual circumstances or conditions. Violation of the county's smoking ban or restrictions on the sale and distribution of tobacco products constitutes an infraction. Violation of the ban on smoking in multi-unit residences more than 3 times a year also constitutes a misdemeanor. Further, under the city's ordinances, certain of the county's restrictions, violation of certain of the county's restrictions by a county employee constitutes a cause for employee discipline. The county smoking regulations and restrictions on the sale and distribution of tobacco products apply in Brisbane only at properties the county may own, lease, or maintain. In other words, the county's law does not apply within Brisbane. The county recently amended its tobacco retailer permit requirements to extend those requirements to retailers of e-cigarettes. The city's current ordinance does not extend the definition that far. Because the county enforces Brisbane's requirements for it to continue to do that, Brisbane would need to amend its ordinance to match the county's ordinance and expand the definition of tobacco to include e-cigarettes. Many jurisdictions statewide have adopted local tobacco or e-cigarette regulations, including numerous local entities in the county. Some jurisdictions within the county have adopted ordinances that impose restrictions that are identical to the county's restrictions. Other jurisdictions have adopted some but not all of the county's restrictions, or have adopted the county's restrictions without extending the restrictions to e-cigarettes. On the other hand, some local governments in the county have adopted more onerous restrictions than those imposed by the county. For example, some jurisdictions have banned smoking or the use of e-cigarettes on sidewalks, in outdoor eating areas, sports fields and arenas, events sponsored by the local entity, public transit depots, chemical storage units, hotels and motels, indoor or outdoor service lines at business establishments. The county has provided a summary of the smoking and e-cigarette policies adopted by various jurisdictions within San Mateo County, and that summary is attached at the end of the staff report. Many jurisdictions outside of the county have also adopted smoking and e-cigarette regulations, and some of those are set forth in the staff report. The proposed smoking ordinance recommended by the committee is modeled closely after the county's regulations. The proposed ordinance generally imposes the same substantive regulations on smoking and the sale and distribution of tobacco products as the county imposes. And like the county, the proposed ordinance defines smoking and tobacco products to include e-cigarettes. But the proposed ordinance that the committee has recommended differs in several substantive ways from the county's regulations. And those include the county's ban on smoking in existing units or existing common areas of a multi-unit residence did not take effect until 14 months after the effective date of the county's ordinance. The proposed ordinance shortens the effective date slightly to 12 months after the effective date of the city's ordinance, should that ordinance be adopted. But like the county's ordinances, all other aspects of the proposed ordinance would take effect 30 days after adoption of the ordinance. Unlike the county's ordinance, the proposed ordinance contains no exemption for smoking or vaporizing of medical marijuana in individual units in multi-unit residences. The third difference is that the proposed ordinance would impose the same penalties for violation of the smoking ban or restrictions on sale and distribution of tobacco products that the county imposes for violating the smoking ban in multi-unit residences. And unlike the county's regulation, the proposed ordinance does not include a provision establishing that a violation of the ordinance by a city employee is cause for disciplinary action. Where the city's ordinance exceeds restrictions currently imposed under state and federal law, the city would need to meet and confer with employee representatives prior to implementing that provision. Additionally, the proposed ordinance, if adopted, would amend the city's existing tobacco retailer permit requirements to include the broader definition of tobacco products contained in the smoking restrictions. In other words, it would extend to retailers of e-cigarettes. As a result of this change, e-cigarette retailers would need to obtain a tobacco retailer permit. This change is necessary to conform the city's tobacco permitting provisions to the county's permitting provisions, something that is necessary for the county to continue to enforce. The committee made several requests of staff, and one was having to do with medical marijuana. The committee made the recommendation that council not include in the smoking ordinance the provision contained in the county's ordinance that exempts from the ban on smoking, the smoking and vaporizing of medical marijuana in individual units of a multi-unit residence. The committee felt that safer non-smoking, non-vaporizing methods of using marijuana, for example, ingesting marijuana in pill form, are available to the users of medical marijuana, and that smoking or vaporizing of medical marijuana, even for medical purposes, poses a health risk and nuisance to others in a multi-unit residence situation. However, the committee wanted staff to include in the staff report 2 alternatives should the council decide to take this in a different direction. And both of those are provided on page 6 of the staff report. The first is an alternative language which would essentially adopt the same exemption for medical marijuana, smoking and vaporizing in multi-unit residents, in the individual units of a multi-unit resident that the county has adopted in its ordinance. The second alternative that the committee requested we provide would allow individuals with a doctor's note recommending that the individual smoke medical marijuana rather than use marijuana through another non-smoking, non-vaporizing method based on any enhanced medicinal effects that smoking or vaporizing offers that particular individual. So an individual who has that sort of doctor's note would be able to smoke or vaporize medical marijuana in an individual unit in a multi-unit residence. That option is also set forth as the second alternative on page 6. The second issue the committee requested staff to provide specifically to council has to do with information about the exemption for businesses set forth in the county's ordinance. The committee asked staff to find out more information about why the county included this exemption, which would allow businesses to request an exemption from the smoking ban, and how often the county has granted that exemption. We understand from the county that it's not entirely clear why the county included this provision in the ordinance, but in any event, the county reports that no business has ever applied for the exemption. The county representative is here and can speak to that if the council has further questions. The proposed ordinance as drafted contains the identical exemption that the county has in it. And then finally, the committee requested authorization from the council to work with the city attorney to discuss possible options for restricting the establishment of vape shops in the city. If the council has any questions, I'm happy to address those questions at this point.
Questions for staff?
I do actually. I think for a representative from the county, I would like to ask a couple questions. Since, well, if I may, Madam Mayor. Yeah, because the county regulates all of this if we adopt the ordinance and everything. So how do you regulate it?
Sure. And just for the record, I'm Shonda Scruggs, Director of Tobacco Prevention for San Mateo County Health System. You're referencing our tobacco retailer permit program. Is that what your question is and how we regulate that?
Well, how do you regulate people in multi-units, complaint-driven, that type of thing? Because it seems to me, you can't have somebody out there do.
Correct. You're absolutely right. It is a complaint-driven system, and that is what the suggestion we've made for all of the cities for it to be complaint-driven, because we do not want to have police officers standing in multi-unit residences looking for something like that. That is why we suggest a longer period of education to give people time to change their behaviors. We are not wanting to go in and just follow and look for people. We want people to change their behaviors to protect their neighbors. So it is complaint driven. So we do an education campaign where we send information out to all of the properties impacted by that. We put advertisements in the newspapers, and then we also maintain a smoke-free complaint line where people can call. And in those instances, we follow up with the complainant, the landlord or property manager, as well as the person we perceived to be the offending smoker. In almost in every occasion, those little nudges actually get people to modify their behavior. So we're not actually having to cite people with financial penalties.
So what are the statistics on the number of complaints that the county has received, like on an annual basis, you know?
Do you know on an annual basis? So Francesca maintains our hotline. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. We might see 4 or 5 calls in a given month from any of the 21 jurisdictions in the county. And this could come from cities that have policies and cities that don't have policies. And it's the point when we start to receive a large number of complaints from a city that doesn't have a policy that we present that information to the city council for perhaps to proceed with having a policy. So the numbers are fairly low.
Okay. Is
San Mateo County
that
has.
just smoking in general or marijuana specifically?
It's smoking in general. Yeah. So San Mateo County does have the second lowest smoking rate in the entire state. So there's a very small population of people who continue to smoke in the county, but even though the numbers are small, they still have the ability to impact a large number of people.
Sure.
Yeah. So the intent is not to tell people they must quit smoking. It's just that we ask that they modify their behavior so that they are not impacting people who do not smoke.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I don't know if anybody else has questions for her.
Questions.
I still have more questions, but
Could I just follow up on the enforcement part, which is,
Yeah.
we got a letter from a citizen wondering about the role of homeowners associations, and so would you speak to that?
Sure, and this issue actually came up in Foster City as well, the question about whether or not homeowners associations would take the lead and do something themselves. And what we found from all the homeowners associations is that, yes, they have the legal right to do so, to change their CCNRs, but it becomes a quite onerous process for them to actually do so. And then the legal fees associated with doing that, they just believe that it becomes too much for them to do. And in almost every instance, they prefer that the city to do something, and then they tell their residents they have to comply. But it is within their right to do it ahead of a city. We've just found that they said that it is too costly for them to do.
Okay, and so then you have two kinds of enforcement. One is the permitting process for retail sales.
Yes.
And that's really handled by the county.
Correct.
But then the other part of it is if people are smoking where they shouldn't be,
Yes.
then that's a police responsibility of the various jurisdictions.
Yes, yes. But in most cases, we've actually not seen that had to happen in most jurisdictions. So in Belmont was the first city in the entire world to pass a smoke-free multi-unit housing policy. They've only issued 1 citation in 7 years.
Okay.
So when there was the high expectation that the police would be spending a lot of time in issuing citation, that really didn't pan itself out.
Okay.
And in Foster City, they received essentially the same number of calls prior to the ordinance as they did after the ordinance. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
interesting. Chief, has your department received calls in multi-unit places in regards to marijuana or anything like that? Or
Yes, we have. In multi-unit apartment complexes, we have.
yeah, is there like a number of calls per month or year or something like that? Do you have it?
It's been very minimal,
Okay.
very minimal.
And I noticed in the ordinance that there's a lot of statistics about death rates and cancer rates and what have you. And where did those come from exactly?
All of the findings that are set forth in the ordinance came from the studies and the findings and the reports that the county had used and adopted. The county has had two different pieces of legislation. So we took the studies and reports set forth in each of those and combined them together into one piece of legislation that includes findings from both of the county's legislations.
Okay. Could we footnote that? I mean, because, we're throwing out a lot of statistics that, just to kind of have a place to go back to where these statistics came from, So I think it'd be important to footnote it in the ordinance that these statistics were provided for X number.
So,
Because we're putting a lot of things out.
so my concerns were the same, that this ordinance appears to read more like a proclamation than an ordinance. And I also asked the city attorney, although got a late response on that, in fact, during the break, as far as where those statistics came from and why they needed to be in an ordinance when we've never had anything like that in an ordinance before. So adding footnotes to an ordinance sounds like it's making it even more wordy and with more.
Well, I have seen that before, though. I took a look online with some other cities to see what their ordinances looked like, and I actually saw footnotes. I noticed that. I think maybe San Mateo had that, so it's been done, and I kind of agree with Clark that it shows the source.
I was thinking they shouldn't even be in the ordinance, the statistics.
I'm okay with statistics, but I think we should have a track record, I mean, for future, reference of where these statistics came from, because, 20 years from now, none of us are going to be around, at least maybe a year. And, yeah, except for Randy.
So are you envisioning source material for each of the studies?
No, just in general. Like where these statistics came from.
These studies were provided by San Mateo County in connection with their legislative process. We can add that. I might recommend that we actually just include that in the text of the whereases. Although I have seen it, I think the footnoting can get cumbersome, and if it's really just a sentence, I'm not sure it needs to be in a footnote.
I was meaning just more of a blurb of where they came from. I'm sure that was one source, but, their studies, probably many, but, we didn't do the study, and that's basically where I'm coming from, is that, it's like we're throwing out all these statistics, and it's like, well, where's the study? I go, I don't know, I mean, if somebody asked me, I wouldn't know, I don't know where they came from. So I think it's just important from a historical context that at least we put something in there that these statistics were provided by San Mateo County Health Department.
So I just wanted to clarify one point, Madam Mayor, that the whereas clauses are in the legislation that you're adopting. They will not be in the codified version of the ordinance that is in the code. The whereas clauses are not included there. It's just the operative provisions of the ordinance that will be included. So while they are certainly very much present in the document in front of you and what you would be adopting, they would be contained in the file that the clerk keeps with the staff report and everything else that you have in front of you. But none of the whereas clauses would be included in the Brisbane Municipal Code. And so that's how you have done it with other ordinances as well.
Okay. Did you have any other questions for the county?
Or no, mine. They were finished quite a while ago. I was just wondering if anybody else did. So.
Yeah, I do. If I may, Madam Mayor. Hello, Chandra.
Hey, how are you?
Doing great. So, some of the items listed here that are not in your ordinance. Just kind of curious why some of them are not, like outdoor eating areas or sport fields and arenas. Is that for, you could have a smoking section or?
No, it ended up that a lot of those things weren't applicable in the unincorporated areas of the county.
Okay, they don't really apply to you.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that totally makes sense.
Like foster cities would say sports fields because there are lots of sports fields, but most of them don't apply in the unincorporated areas of the county.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
And then, so one of the things that we're proposing is a 12-month effective date as opposed to your 14 months. Why 14 months?
So it ended up being a time to allow people for greater education. So you have the effective date and then 30 days from the day that it's passed, And so then there was another window, so they just ended up adding another month on that period of time.
Okay.
And there was the separation between new units, meaning those that might be newly built from that point forward. That would have been 12 months, but for existing units, it would have been 14. So it was to give residents substantial time to adjust behaviors.
Okay. Yeah, with the county being spread out all over
Yes.
the place, and
Yes.
here we're more central, of course.
Yes, and the area most impacted in the unincorporated areas of the county is North Fair Oaks. So we have to also allow for additional time for multiple language distribution of the education materials.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Then I was surprised about the disciplinary actions. That sounds pretty harsh.
Those are kind of long-standing, and so those have been in the ordinance for a very long period of time. So those areas of the language were not changed when the county did it. So the 100, 200, 500, I can't remember what the numbers are. Those are very similar across the board, even in other cities. I think Foster Cities is actually higher than the counties are.
Okay. And then ingesting marijuana instead of smoking it. Did you guys talk about that? And
No, so because my my department is solely focused on tobacco and secondhand smoke as it relates to tobacco, we don't have official opinions about the use of marijuana and the method of ingestion.
No, okay, no, that makes sense. Okay. And I'd just like to get your opinion on the difference between a vape shop and a vapor lounge, and Teresa, if you can, chime in on that as well. Or maybe it's a Teresa question.
No, I mean either. Okay.
Go ahead.
So from a lot of places, it's a matter of semantics. Some would say vape shop, some say vape lounge. I think it generally depends on how much space the location has allowed for use of the product as opposed to how much retail space they've allowed. So a vape shop might be a shop solely dedicated to the sale of the devices and accessories and maybe has a small space in the back for people to try, whereas a vape lounge would have a much more substantial space for them to try the products and smaller shelf space when it comes to the sale of the products. So it really is semantics. It has to do with floor space, but in a lot of jurisdictions they use the terms interchangeably. So if you look in Hayward and Union City, they will say vape shops / lounges.
Okay. Yeah, no, I have some questions for Teresa later on, so trying to get that clarification down.
Yeah.
About what's prohibited and then what's allowed. But yeah, we'll
So my answer is going to be having to do with looking at the primary use and what is an ancillary use that is ancillary to the primary use. So, I agree that the practical answer is you kind of have to look at it and what's really going on. But depending on how your zoning ordinance reads, whether something is a primary use or an ancillary use can be the difference between whether it's permitted or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so the terms actually do make a difference when you're making those kinds of distinctions. But, sometimes it's hard to tell which is which. If a vape shop is there's a lot of use happening at the vape shop, it may start looking like a vape lounge, but really what's really happening there, its primary function is retail, then it would be a retail use that's permitted. So we can address that when we get there, but the distinction is actually important, at least in terms of the way that the current zoning ordinance reads.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Chandra.
Councilwoman Liu, did you have questions?
I did. I had emailed Ms. Scruggs some questions, but apparently
Yes,
she wasn't in the office
all
today,
day,
so I'll ask them now.
Sure.
So, talking about multi-unit housing, the ordinance says that the person in control over the common area can designate a designated smoking area so that people who do want to smoke can go to that location since they're not permitted to do so in their individual unit. So how would that work in areas like we have at the Ridge, where it's a common, where there's potentially units that are owned, or they could be rented, but there's no management company, other than the HOA management, but it's not like a single standing apartment building. So how does that work? Who is it that determines what the designated smoking area is?
In that case, it would be an HOA. It
Okay,
would be an HOA.
okay. Great. And then also the provision, there's a provision that talks about the education about leases, that the county will provide a sample, or that it will provide, that every lease will be required to contain a provision stating that smoking in violation of the ordinance will be considered a violation of the lease.
Yes.
So as part of the educational campaign, will the county be providing sample language for landlords to use?
Yes, it's a very simple addendum, and the examples we generally provide are those that have been crafted by apartment associations. So we've provided landlords and property managers with California Apartment Association addendum language that they can use, as well as examples from throughout the United States that may be available. But yes, we do provide all of that information.
Okay.
And so
great.
sometimes it's just a simple, it's not a rewritten lease. It's just the addendum that the person verifies that they received that information. It can be very similar to when a facility allows for pets and then they no longer allow for pets. They must then notify everyone that that policy has changed. The person has to acknowledge receipt of that information, and kind of that's it.
Okay, great. And then the last question is about the vape shops. I know I don't know if we're going to talk about that separately, but since you're up here, I'll ask you. You had mentioned at our last subcommittee meeting that Belmont was going to be considering that, and I'm curious to know
So
what
Belmont's
decision
meeting
they
was
made.
held on Tuesday.
Okay.
And we presented information about options for them. The difference is in Belmont, they do not have a tobacco retail licensing program. And so that would be the mechanism to account for all of the stores and therefore track and then see if their zoning rules apply to them. So they're in the stage now where they're considering if they're going to implement a tobacco retail license program. So their meeting was just on Tuesday. And so that was the direction that they've given staff to look into options for them to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Before
Yes.
you go, would you talk a little bit about how you're going to be able to help us with the education program?
Sure. Our Tobacco Education Coalition, which is made up of interested community members, health-serving organizations, and various members of countywide staff throughout the health department, not just in my office. We put together packets of information to provide to as many of the properties as we can. So in a place like Daly City that has 7,000 units, we sent mailers to half of those units, not all 7,000. But we would send it to the largest one because half of the properties are owned by a single property management company. So we figured that we had very wide coverage there. We also then did some groundwork. We went to some specific buildings and flyered in those areas. We put advertisements in the newspapers to let people know that these laws had passed, and if they needed assistance, that we provided our phone number for them to call us. So we do a lot of push because we have contractors who work with us to get this information out, to go to the properties, provide education for people, as well as put information in a many number of public sources for folks. And then if they have complaints, we say, call our office and we can help you with that, because we don't want cities to be dedicating their police force to solely doing this task. We believe, again, this is not a punishment for people. We just want people to modify their behaviors to protect the health of their fellow residents. So we will do that education, and sometimes it needs to be on an individual basis. So if someone calls and says, my neighbor and I, we can't seem to agree about this, could you help? The health department is not the police, but we can go in and we can have that conversation. And if we feel that we cannot mitigate the problems at that level, then we do call the police. But we actually haven't had to do that. So most times it's just simply about the level of education. That's why we give substantial amounts of time for us to have several waves of education. So in Daly City, again, the largest city, there were 3 waves of information that went out to the residents. And then, we talked to them about doing the banners in some of the main locations. That was a little hard logistically for us to do, but we did quite a bit. And we also have community agencies who go out on our behalf to table at community events, especially in cities that have new policies, to provide that information as well. So we do a lot of that footwork because, again, our efforts are to get people to change their behaviors so that the cities have a high level of compliance.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, any other questions for staff?
Yeah, I do. So, Teresa, getting to item number 3, the request to the city attorney to explore options for limiting vape shops. So, on page 7, so the third and the fourth paragraphs. So in the third paragraph, it talks about the proposed smoking ordinance would ban vaping in all businesses patronized by the public. And then if adopted, the proposed smoking ordinance would restrict restaurant and bar patrons from vaping on site. And of course, that would be all public, all businesses that would be patronized by the public, not just the restaurants and bars. Okay, so then going into that fourth paragraph in the middle part where it says, any on-site vaping in a vape shop would be allowed under the current zoning ordinance as long as the vaping is incidental to the retail business and not otherwise prohibited by the smoking ordinance the city may adopt. So
if you adopt the ordinance,
yes,
not only would it ban smoking and vaping in restaurants and bars and other businesses, but those businesses would include the vape shops as well, as long as it's within the part of the business patronized by the public.
okay. And then if the vape shop was a members-only club, does that then provide a loophole to?
Yes.
Okay. So, and that then would be the main reason why you would then try and write some kind of ordinance that would then capture that, or is that something that the city could not impose on a club?
If you're talking about the vaping component in a private club, we would need to explore what the options are. There are a lot of cities that are doing a lot of different things, the point of this item, this aspect of the item, is to get permission for us to take a closer look and see what the legal options are for Brisbane. In terms of the retail component, there is nothing that would, in your current ordinance, preclude a vape shop from coming in, putting aside the vaping that may be occurring in that vape shop, but just a vape shop coming in, opening up business and selling e-cigarette products. There's nothing in your current ordinance that would preclude that.
And yeah, and then say Julie's Liquors decided to sell e-cigarettes. I mean that is an option that they could do.
Yes.
It wouldn't be called a vape shop. It's Julie's Liquors, and they sell cigarettes and other items, but they also sell this product too.
That's correct.
Okay. But someone couldn't fire up an e-cigarette in their facility, or at their facility, or in their place of business.
They could not if you pass the ordinance that is before you, and they're in places that the public patronizes.
Okay. So then this other part on page 7, in regards to the additional city attorney time.
Yes.
To expand language in the ordinance to make it more restrictive, to have smoking or vaping in Brisbane. It seems like we're covered for the most part from the ordinance. So I'm struggling to understand why there would be additional work needed.
So what the ordinance gets you in terms of the vapor shops and the vape lounges is the actual vaping. So the ordinance before you takes care of the vaping in public places. So any business you wouldn't be allowed to vape in any business if you're in parts of the business that are patronized by the public, whether that's a restaurant, a bar, a vape shop, a liquor store, wherever you are, you wouldn't be able to do it. It does not get at sales beyond the very limited sales restrictions that this proposed ordinance has. The vending machines, the self-service displays, the out of package sales. There are a few very minor sales restrictions that the ordinance in front of you would impose on both tobacco products and e-cigarettes. But beyond those very narrow things, there's nothing to preclude a retailer from coming in and selling e-cigarette products as long as they have a tobacco retailer permit.
Okay.
Whether it's a liquor store or some other type of retailer selling lots of different products, or a specialty store designed really just to sell e-cigarette products.
And are you aware of any cities that ban the sale of e-cigarettes?
So I would like to ask the county representative to come up. There are a number of jurisdictions doing lots of different things. The county has provided us with some of that information. She's an excellent source. I have not begun the process of looking carefully at the various options that exist. I do know that one general option is a conditional use permit situation. The other general option is some sort of restriction in terms of number of feet away from certain kinds of facilities like schools or parks. Beyond that, I will leave it to the county to tell you what she knows about what various jurisdictions are doing.
Sure. The cities of Hayward and Union City outwardly banned the retail locations of vape shops or vape lounges. The city of Seaside and Monterey also do the same. Berkeley uses, in one case, I think it's Union City used conditional use permits. In Berkeley, they also use conditional use permits, and they do it by distance, within 600 feet of a school. So you cannot sell electronic cigarettes or accessories or electronic smoking devices or flavored products within 600 feet. And I believe also Hayward, theirs is 500 feet within an existing retailer. So they're also limiting the number of new traditional tobacco retailers, in addition to new vape shops or vape lounges that they outright prohibit.
Okay. And Chandra, in your interpretation,
Yes.
if the local liquor store was selling e-cigarettes, that, in your opinion, would that be considered a vape shop because they...
No, it would not. So if you have a liquor store right now that sells an e-cigarette, they might already sell e-cigarettes because there's nothing that prohibits them from doing so right now. They would then need to have a tobacco retailer permit. But in most instances, a place that sells traditional cigarettes are more likely to be the ones to sell electronic cigarettes. You're not likely to see the grocery store that doesn't sell tobacco products all of a sudden sell e-cigarettes. So most of the stores that are just general retail stores, they might already have a tobacco retailer permit, and this would be, they could continue to sell e-cigarettes if they did because they already had a permit. This would be looking at stores that now want to sell probably exclusively electronic devices that don't currently have a tobacco retailer permit.
Okay. All right. So then I guess we could have some kind of ordinance that was related to that, that, that if a certain percentage of your sales were dedicated to just this particular type of use, then that could be prohibited. But if it was only 1% of your sale, or some kind of formula.
Yes. So like in Belmont, there are 4 stores that primarily sell electronic smoking devices. One of those stores was already a substantial tobacco retailer, and so they were aware of that store. The other 3 stores are brand new that sell exclusively accessories and electronic smoking devices.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
One curiosity.
Yes.
I know the state law prohibits the sale of tobacco products to those who are under 18.
Yes.
When you get into the e-cigarette, vaping, accessories, and all that sort of thing, I mean, where is the line drawn?
Correct. So at the state level in the Health and Safety Code, there is a prohibition of selling electronic smoking devices to minors under the age of 18, and that is based off the assumption that they contain nicotine. On October 11th, which was just last week, the governor signed in a bill that says also non-nicotine electronic smoking devices cannot be sold to a minor as well. Those do not include the liquids and the additional accessories.
Okay, so those kids could still buy?
Correct. So they could get the bubblegum flavored juice that goes with it, but not the actual device.
Okay. All right. So we could do, say, a moratorium, like a 1-year time period to evaluate what other cities are doing and restrict that from coming into Brisbane.
We could look at that fairly quickly to see what the options are for sort of a temporary measure, but certainly that's something we can look at.
All right.
And depending on how you might go here, you would also be putting yourself into a planning commission process, obviously. if you're talking about changes to the zoning ordinance, we would be in front of the Planning Commission as well. So depending on what options you want to pursue, what that pathway then would look like.
All right. Yeah, you just, I guess we'll have our discussion. So.
I think we'll have public, and then we'll have discussion, and
Yeah. I have one more
I'll wait
question,
for that.
though, for Ms. Scruggs to follow up on what she was just asking. Sorry to call you back up.
Daily exercise.
So you were talking about what other cities do
Yes.
in regulating vape shops. Like you said, Hayward and Union City have outright banned them.
Yes.
So does that include shops where other products are being sold, and it's maybe an incidental use, or?
No, so it would be stores that is their exclusive product line or their exclusive purpose.
Okay,
So
so
if
I'm
you had-
wondering, how is it being regulated if, say, for example, we have one vape shop, one establishment, that may sell tobacco products, and how are other cities regulating it so that to prevent those types of establishments from also selling electronic cigarettes?
So they're not prohibiting them from also selling that separate product line. They're prohibiting stores where that is their sole purpose. So most of the stores that exist would have already had tobacco retail licenses and then just added the product line. What they're banning are stores that is their entire product line, electronic smoking devices and their accessories.
Okay.
So it would be like a hookah lounge. So some cities, like San Bruno, has prohibited hookah lounges. So it's the same thing as that specific type of establishment.
Okay, great. Thank you
Absolutely.
for the clarification.
So I do have one question for the staff, and we have, how many tobacco retailers do we have in Brisbane?
2.
I think 2.
Your guess is as good as mine. I'm Julie's, I guess.
Midtown.
Yeah, Midtown.
Midtown, yeah, they sell cigarettes there.
Anybody else?
I think Clay's correct. I know Julie's and Midtown are the two, and neither of the two sell e-cigarettes at all.
Clue, I don't know.
I'm not sure if the Brisbane Inn is that considered, if that's considered a retailer if they sell cigarettes inside the bar. Those are the only that I can think of offhand.
It just seems that we're going through a lot of discussion about tobacco retailers and whether they can sell e-cigarettes or other products when we have 2 retailers. And to get a tobacco retail license here is a conditional use under our zoning, isn't it? It would come before to get a new tobacco license. Okay. And the other question I had was what kind of outreach to our condominium owners and HOAs has been done as far as to let them know what the proposed ordinances would be on the smoking in their multi-unit dwellings?
I don't think we did any outreach other than our normal posting and.
Okay. Thank you.
I did get a note from a staff member that Christie's down at the donut shop has a retail license for tobacco products too. So there may be several of these that's why I kind of was dumbfounded when
Okay.
he asked the question.
Okay. And then speaking of Christie's and the donut shop and the, I believe Madhouse Coffee has a smoking area, and the Christie's has a little area that people will smoke there. Are those affected by this regulation?
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, will you repeat the question, please?
Well, Christie's Donut Shop has an area that they allow patrons to smoke, and I believe Madhouse Coffee has a smoking area. Are those going to be regulated and curtailed by this ordinance?
Are those outdoor smoking areas, or they're outdoor? This ordinance as proposed doesn't regulate outdoor. It's indoor.
No outdoor smoking regulation.
It's enclosed areas.
Okay.
Enclosed area. There are outdoor provisions, but they have to do with parks and open areas, not businesses.
But sidewalks.
If it's a city-owned structure within 30 feet of an enclosed city-owned structure, I'm not sure of the particular establishment. I don't know that would fall within 30 feet of a city-owned structure. Any enclosed area that's accessible to the public and enclosed areas between businesses. And the outdoor spaces are all beaches, parks, and trails owned by the city or maintained or operated by the city.
Thank you. So are we ready to open it up for public comments?
Yes.
And I don't have any slips from the public that want to speak. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on this issue? I see one hand. And another hand.
Thank you. I didn't realize I needed to sign up for a point that was on the agenda. Carolyn Kernberger. Again, I addressed you folks in May. The initial request to consider a non-smoking, to request smoke-free multi-unit housing. I wanted to just make a point. I mean, of course, we suffer daily, and it's not a good situation. And I think we've covered that. We understand that for especially kids to have to breathe secondhand smoke is not a good situation. What I wanted to tell you here is the petition that my daughter began on change.org. I brought this in August, and at that point there were 67 signatures. There's now 68. But I want to make a point that this specifically, these folks signed on to the wording here is enact a city ordinance prohibiting cigarette smoking in or near multi-unit housing, and gives some reasoning. And it talks about we urge the Brisbane City Council to adopt a city ordinance that models the smoke-free multi-unit housing adopted by San Mateo County. So any kind of variances we have here in what you're considering, for example, the lack of an exemption for medical marijuana, or in all the other vape shop things, these folks did not sign on that. These folks said, these 68 people were signing that they don't want cigarette smoking in multi-unit housing, and that's the point I'm here to make as well. So at any rate, I did give this to Sherry last time. This is on record in your public record, and so that's what we're here to work on.
Are you, as a quick question, are you saying that your people weren't against e-cigarettes or medical marijuana?
I have no idea. See,
Okay.
I mean that wasn't even right.
Okay.
Those were not pulled out specifically.
Okay.
So I want it noted that these 68 people are specifically against the smoking of tobacco smoke in multi-unit housing. So thank you very much.
Madison?
Hello, Madison Davis. So as I have been sitting here and listening to the ordinance and you guys discuss it, I was wondering if you had thought about a hookah lounge, and that's primary. It's not a vape shop, right? But it's still focusing on smoking, and so I'm wondering, why that wasn't addressed, or if that is covered by this ordinance, and if that's something that you are considering as well. Thank you.
Tony Varios?
Thank you, Mayor O'Connell. What Madison Davis just said was interesting to me too, because my approach from the beginning when I heard of this issue was that smoke is smoke, and it should all be dealt with in one ordinance, even if that causes the city to take more time to craft it, to do it well. If it costs more money for the city attorney to help you reach that conclusion and do it, create a law that's more effective, that you can be proud of passing, then I would rather wait, spend that money, and get it done right than do a piecemeal approach. That's item number one. Number two is when it comes to the condominiums, there are, sometimes I hear discussion about it that it seems to me a little confusing. Up on the ridge where I live and where Council Member Lou lives, there are 3 homeowners, well actually 4 now, homeowner associations. There's Viewpoint, then Altamar, then Landmark, and now Toll Brothers. And Toll Brothers is a copycat of Landmark. But the difference is that Landmark and Toll Brothers are single-family homes. It's a condominium owners association, but they are single-family homes. So as I understand it, this ordinance may not even apply to them. I'm not sure. My bigger concern is in the multifamily units, which are apartment buildings and condos at Altamar and Viewpoint at the Ridge. Viewpoint, where I live, has units, 46 buildings, that run from 3 to 5 units per building. And I have smokers living right next to me. They are very, very fine people. And they're, because mom doesn't want smoking in the house, the boys all get to go out and smoke outside. That hasn't bothered us at this point, but there is potential for that kind of thing if they decide to go out and smoke on the back deck, and you want to sit on your back deck, then it could be an issue because smoke goes up. I don't think that there are, I don't know, I can't quote you a statistic on how many apartment buildings there are in Brisbane, but I know it's not a very high percentage of all the residential units. There may be 20. I don't know exactly how many there are. I'm not sure if anybody here does. But for those individuals and families that live in those units, this could be a big issue. And I like the county's approach of trying to not beat people up and penalize them, but to educate them so that they can still do what they need to do. They can't quit smoking, fine. Go find a place where it's still legal to smoke and smoke. And go ahead and kill yourself. That's fine. But it's not fine to infringe on everybody else's right to breathe clean air. That's my big thing. I want to breathe clean air. So I'm hoping that you'll look at this thing in its totality. And when I heard when I walked in late on this meeting, I came in. The city attorney was reading an exemption, and I'm not sure if I understood it to be an exemption that the county has proposed in many ordinances adopted by other cities, but that was my impression, and it was a medical marijuana smoking exemption. Now, if the state or the feds are saying, probably wouldn't be the feds because they don't like marijuana at all, but if the state has imposed a restriction that prohibits a city or county from restricting the use of medical marijuana smoke in your house in a multi-unit building, then I'm sure there's no way the city can get around that. But if it hasn't been set in stone by the state and you can prohibit that, then I would prohibit that as well, because the research that I read says that the active ingredients, THC or whatever it is, that people need to kill their pain can be attained orally by means other than smoking. I think you're all well aware of that. So I'd appreciate it if you look into this thing very carefully. I appreciate the time you put into it and want you to get it right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
15, Tony.
Danny Ames?
Thank you. I'd like to speak with personal experience. My mom had a roommate who smoked, and you're incinerating something. It's burning. I think vaping's different, and I think people need to vape, and I wouldn't want to just crack down on everything. I think that we should be more lenient. If you go to WebMD, it's suggested that's less toxic, the secondhand vape. So I don't want to see an overreach in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who would? Joel Diaz?
Good evening, Joel Diaz, honorable council members. So, this is a tough issue for me because of the moral question. And, although I strongly discourage smoking, especially if it influences children, I think, we should stop it and deter it at all costs. But I do think that if we impinge upon private property, it's a slippery slope. And I think there's something that can be done to regulate private property, but I don't know that it needs to be involving the police. I think there are other ways to possibly empower tenants or people having a problem with smokers. I think it's fine to regulate public spaces, to discourage undesirable businesses. That stuff all makes sense, and it's I think well within the purview of local government to do that. But I think there are other ways. I think you could encourage the landlord to do a lot of this work. I think there could be a disclosure. They shouldn't put smokers next to families. They shouldn't let families move into smokers, people that are problematic. I think there could be a way for tenants to receive restitution. To be paid to find another place if they're so impacted. I don't think more bureaucracy, more citations, putting people in jail is the answer. I don't think that's the future. That's the easy, strong hand of the law, and that's a simple solution probably. Up front, I think long term it's a bigger problem, and I would just caution you to be careful how you interpret the data. The statistics that have been put forth before you. Maybe there's a broader problem with the county of San Mateo. I think with Brisbane, it's probably statistically insignificant. Statistics can be skewed one way or the other. I don't know if many people know this, but doctors and hospitals are responsible for killing more people in the U.S. than smoking, alcohol, auto accidents. And those are medical mistakes. But we're not going to tell people not to go to hospitals. These are some of the assumed risks. And if you're going to live in an apartment building, there's going to be some assumed risk there. You don't know if your neighbor is going to be a problem. And so I think that you probably should go slow on the private property aspect of this. I think the public thing is great. That's fine. I think we should do that. I think there's some problems in the public at some of our parks, people smoking, drinking, carrying on in a way that's not consistent with the moral values of our community. But in terms of private property, I feel and I sympathize for the people, but I think you should go slow. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we all received a letter from Carolyn Parker, and she is speaking, she wrote a letter on her own, not as, she's a member of the Homeowners Association, Vice President of Altamar at the Ridge, and she has some concerns about banning cigarette smoking and smoking of medical marijuana in condos and on condo decks. And she went on to say that she was not speaking for the Altamar board, but rather expressing her personal concerns. First is about notification, and that all condo associations in Brisbane should be notified, and those residents given the opportunity to know about the proposed bans that may be on their rental or their owned units. And she was asking about if it extended to the townhomes or what the exact definition of a multi-unit building would be. And enforcement, which I think has been somewhat explained, whether it would be the responsibility of the homeowners association, and how implemented the other cities that have implemented how it was working. She went on to say, having sat through a few meetings where members of the public have come down and expressed their feelings, I know that homeowners and renters feel certain entitlement to their own places and what they can do inside their own homes. As an example, homeowners and renters using their domains for vacation rentals with the VBRO, and how much notification they may have legislated on whether they will be allowed to smoke in their homes they bought or are currently renting. And she thinks it is best to remember and keep in mind that if we do enact the ordinance, then law-abiding citizens who smoke will be out of compliance if they smoke within the walls of their own homes. She's not saying that she agrees or disagrees with the ordinance, but that the citizens of Brisbane need to be properly notified. And she asked that we put that into the record. So if there's any other members of the public who'd like to speak on this subject? Okay, so that brings us to discussion.
If I may, Madam Mayor, you had asked a question regarding the tobacco retailer permitting and had asked whether that was a conditional use permit situation, and it's not. It's not part of the zoning ordinance. It's part of the health and safety part of our Brisbane Brisbane Code, and it is, as we mentioned before, implemented and enforced by the county, and it's a regulatory procedure by which the retailer needs to apply for a permit, pay a fee, and as long as they're not out of compliance currently, then they are issued a permit and they need to come back. It's a tracking mechanism.
So there's no restrictions on where a permit can be issued?
As long as you're within a permitted zone under the zoning ordinance. In other words, it has to be a zone that allows for a retailer to be there. It can't be a residential zone. But as long as you are in a zone that allows for a retail shop, it's not a conditional use situation. It's
so for us, for a retail shop, that would be in our retail area of Brisbane Village and Visitation Avenue. Would that be correct for the retail?
Perhaps staff can help me as to specific locations. Yes.
I think that's correct, what you said.
It's not like we could have hookah lounges and vape shops popping up everywhere, just in retail area.
The retail shops would have to be in an area that was zoned for that permitted use. It isn't a conditional use situation.
Okay.
The lounges are another issue, but in terms of retail, the retail has to be in a zone that allows for retail, but then it's a matter of right.
Okay. Thank you. And we decided we had 3 or 4 permits. 3 permits, or maybe we didn't. Maybe we didn't look at that.
Do you have a copy of Carolyn Parker's letter in front of you?
Oh, did you not get one?
No. I'm talking about our city attorney.
I do not.
Yeah, because she asked some very specific questions about the ordinance, which.
The definitions. I was listening to the mayor explain the letter, and the the concern about what is or isn't a multi-unit resident and whether townhomes are included, it's very clear in the ordinance. A townhome is a multi-unit resident. It talks about shared walls. The only type of residence that is really removed, a permanent residence that is really removed, would be a detached single family residence is not covered by the smoking ban. So someone who lives in, whether they're a renter or an owner, in a detached single family home would not be subject to the ordinance.
So the two unit duplexes or triplexes that we have here in downtown Brisbane, well, in all of Brisbane, would all be considered part of this regulation.
They would be considered multi-unit residents subject to the ban on multi-unit smoking or vaping in a multi-unit residence. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me see what other. I think staff addressed the notification point. Number 2 was, would it extend to townhomes that share walls, such as Viewpoint at the Ridge? If there are townhomes that share walls, yes, it would apply to those properties. Enforcement, as I think Ms. Scruggs has explained, is really in the experience of the county and the other jurisdictions that have adopted the similar types of ordinances, has been more an educational effort. Beyond the education stage, what we are understanding is that there are relatively few calls, but it would be a police issue. It would not be the homeowner association or the landlord is not expected to enforce beyond putting in lease agreements and such the appropriate language which requires compliance with the ordinance. And I think to the extent there are any questions about how other cities have implemented the ordinance and feel it is working, I think Ms. Scruggs can answer any additional questions the council may feel has not been addressed at this point.
Thank you. So do you want to start, Laurie?
Sure.
Or
Just
do you have a question?
Well, I wanted to follow up on one of the public comments we heard from Madison Davis. She said, "What about hookah lounges?" And I reviewed the ordinance, and it looks like at least hookah tobacco is included in the definition of tobacco on page 10 of the ordinance. Teresa can verify that. Under
what page?
This is page 10. It seems like hookah lounges is not. I mean, we're looking at the use, not the establishment here. But my understanding of the ordinance is that it does cover not just e-cigarettes, regular cigarettes, cigars, etc., but it lists a whole, a whole list of nicotine products, and hookah tobacco is included in that.
Also, the definition of not only is the definition of tobacco or tobacco product broad enough to include hookah tobacco, the definition of smoke, and the ban is on smoking. The definition of smoke is quite broad. It includes not only vaporizing, but also
chewing.
Any other, not chewing is not included in smoking. Chewing tobacco is a tobacco product within the definition, but the ban is on smoking in multi-unit residence. The tobacco definition comes into play when we're talking about the sales issue, the limited sales issue that this ordinance addresses. The definition of smoking, I'm reading from the definition. Smoking specifically includes but is not limited to gas, particles, vapors, or other byproducts released by electronic cigarettes, tobacco cigarettes, herbal cigarettes, marijuana cigarettes, and any other type of cigarette, pipe, or other implement for the purpose of inhaling vapors, gases, particles, or other byproducts released as a result of combustion or ignition. I believe that would cover anything that
you could try to smoke
or put in a hookah.
Yeah, and as in on item G, as in smoking is in the verb. I think you're looking at the noun. It says hookah pipe as well.
And a hookah pipe, yes.
So that
Thank you.
So I'll be happy to start off the discussion.
It looks like
Unless we have any other questions.
Madison Davis is wanting to comment again. Please.
I hate to be this person. My question was, one of my questions was geared towards, like, we're regulating vaping stores and establishments that are focused on that. So would this then, maybe I'm just understanding you wrong, would this then apply to somebody who wanted to have a straight up hookah lounge where you would come in, like, order drinks and smoke hookah? Because I know, like, it seems really clear that it's monitoring e-cigarette and vaping stores, but would a hookah lounge, the business, fall under this also?
So there are a couple of things that are being thrown around here. One is a ban on using hookah pipes, tobacco products, smoking or vaporizing tobacco products, and doing any of the kinds of things that fall within that broad definition of smoking under the ordinance. And so this is actually about using it. There are only a few provisions in this ordinance that would regulate a business that is would be allowing either selling of hookah products or use of hookah products. So where this ordinance would reach would be no business you would not be able to allow smoking within the enclosed part of your business, smoking or vaping within the enclosed part of your business that is accessible to the public. So a hookah lounge would not be able to operate if it is open and accessible to the public.
Okay.
There are some other possibilities floating around, and the question of whether or not to authorize the city attorney to explore possibilities for additional legislation are also being discussed.
Okay, great, because I know vaping was pretty specific, so then that made me think of a hookah lounge also, and whether this covered that as well. So thank you for that clarification.
Okay, back to you, Lori.
Okay. So, I think it is a complex issue, but at the same time, it's a balancing of, the needs of smokers and the needs and the rights of non-smokers to breathe clean, healthy air. And I think that the science is clear that secondhand smoke is harmful. So I think that having this ordinance, creates that balance, because it's not saying that smokers can't continue to smoke. It just says that, they may need to go in certain designated areas, because otherwise they're infringing on the rights of people who, have the right to be in their own homes and breathe fresh air. And, to say that this only affects, a small amount of people, I think, it's not true. There's been, Carolyn, her daughter has complained about it, and obviously the individual efforts to try to get your neighbors to stop smoking has not been successful. So I see this not as a harsh rule, but really something that is necessary, because without these rules in place, people just aren't going to stop their behaviors. And, the overall goal is to really encourage smokers to stop smoking. Obviously it's nicotine is highly addictive, but if they want to stop smoking, there are many methods out there for them to do so that don't involve actually smoking and harming other people. They can use other smoking cessation devices. So as to the medical marijuana issue, I think that having no exemption like the county, I think, makes sense from a medical perspective. As Dr. Luke mentioned, he would never prescribe medical marijuana to a patient. There's other ways, in a smoking form, there's other ways to get the effects of marijuana in pill or droplets or whatever it is. But there's other ways that you can get the effects of that drug without having to harm other people. And Cliff had mentioned the idea of, why don't we have it in other, like the county doesn't have certain areas like that are covered, like sports fields, and I read through the list. It said public transit depots and outdoor eating areas. And, I hadn't thought about that. And I actually think maybe we should include areas like that, because we do have sports fields. We do have, the Samtrans bus depot. And we do have outdoor eating areas, unlike the unincorporated areas perhaps in the county where smoking could be an issue. So I think making sure that the e-cigarette definition extends to those areas, I think makes sense. And I also like Cliff's idea or suggestion of saying, why don't we, with respect to the vape shops, why don't we just put in place a 1-year moratorium on vape shops while we explore what other options there are. And, I know maybe, like as Terry said, there aren't that many establishments right now that sell tobacco products, but that doesn't mean there can't be in the future. And, I think we need to get in front of this issue right now and say, we don't want this in our community. Vape shops are just going to attract people to get addicted to nicotine, and that's just going to be a stepping stone for getting back into smoking, which is, we've made so much progress in California to stop smoking, and I think having e-cigarettes and vape shops is a step backwards. So I'm hoping that we can follow the lead of other communities and have these restrictions. And as to the notices, going out to establishments, or to HOAs or to apartments, there was the regular notice already in place. The county's going to do their educational campaign, and it's been done in many other cities, and there have been minimal complaints from the management companies or from residents. So I think it's really just about an educational campaign, and I think that having this ordinance just fits really well with Brisbane's character of, protecting clean air, open space, San Bruno Mountain. I mean, it would be great to have this in our history books. Thank you. I'm done.
Clerk.
On page 11, where it said areas where smoking is prohibited, Teresa? And it talks about within any enclosed structure owned or leased by the city or wherever located, right? And then it talks about within, that's in item A. And then in item C, it talks about within any area, including public parking areas of city-owned, operated, maintained beaches, parks, trails, et cetera. The Sierra Point Yacht Club, the parking lots are owned by the city. The property is owned by the city. Does that apply? I mean, because I know yachters, and stuff like that, they like smoke.
I will take your word for it that it's owned by the city. I would need staff to confirm.
Well, owned by the city, but we have a lease to a private yacht club that operates it.
So any enclosed structure owned by the city, it would be precluded in it as long as it is not a private residence. So that would apply. That would apply to property that's being leased as long as the property isn't a residential property.
So, it seems like this would apply if somebody went outside and smoked at the yacht club.
Or any of the parking lots for the marina.
Right.
So the enclosed structures, it would be and within 30 feet in any direction from any enclosed structure owned by the city. So it would be within 30 feet outside of the enclosed yacht club. As to the parking,
I mean, the structure is not owned by the city. The land is owned by the city. So he's getting into semantics here.
Well,
so is this?
It specifically says.
So this would be as to
Specifically
structures.
says including public parking areas of city-owned or operated, maintained beaches, and that whole area is owned by the city. Mm-hmm. Right.
So I'm gonna parse it one piece at a time. So as to the structure is not, as I'm understanding from staff, the structure is not owned or leased by the city. It actually is owned by a private entity. However, the structure sits on city property. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's
okay. If that is true, then the structure would not fall within Provision A because it is not a structure owned or leased by the city. So Provision A would not apply. As to Provision B, if there is a public parking area that is city-owned or operated, I would need to look at the facts a little bit more to determine whether this is a public parking area. If the public parking area is owned by the city, it may be more than just the ground. We would need to parse that through a little bit more carefully. If we need to clarify that language, we can do that.
Yeah, it just, I don't know, it seems like it can get pretty sticky down there. I mean.
Well, the whole marina would be a no smoking area, it sounds like.
That's kind of what it sounds like to me.
All the boats would be non-smoking areas.
I don't know about the boats, but
it's all leased from the city as tenants of.
Yeah, I mean,
and the walkways are city-owned. It would be.
The ordinance doesn't add additional restrictions on smoking. It just treats e-cigarettes like cigarettes are currently treated, is my understanding. So I don't know what the restrictions currently are.
Areas where smoking is prohibited.
No, this would actually. This ordinance creates a smoking prohibition in areas that currently are not, where smoking currently is not prohibited, and the definition of smoking is broad enough to include not only smoking of traditional cigarettes, but smoking of e-cigarettes and hookah pipes and the other things that we've been talking about this evening. It's very broad, the definition. So this would preclude smoking in any area, including public parking areas of city-owned, operated, or maintained beaches, parks, or trails. My interpretation of this would be public parking areas that are associated with city-owned, operated, or maintained beaches, parks, or trails.
Which would be the entire marina.
Yeah, I guess the question is then specifically how does it apply to marina and to the boat owners and everything? You know, because you got a lot of smokers down there, and so.
I think probably the better question is for you, for the five of you, to have that discussion.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's what you want to. I mean, I can check with Ray and Lori, but I don't believe the marina ever came up in terms of the actual, so this is kind of new. So
well, it is, yeah.
Yeah. Rather than trying to.
We didn't talk about
it. Well, I mean, looking at it, it seems like it just blankets the whole thing.
You're right.
It blankets everything.
Yeah.
And it is.
Right.
It's very broad.
Yeah.
But the public parking areas would only the ban would apply in public parking areas only to the extent that it was in connection with city-owned, operated, or maintained beaches, parks, or trails. Of course, if it's an enclosed public parking area, then we get it under Section B, enclosed areas available to and customarily used by the general public. So that would include a parking structure as well. But if you have an open public area that is, for example, used in conjunction with your yacht club is not, unless it's a beach, park, or trail, it would not fall within.
It is.
I don't read.
Well,
I don't read that in here though. What you're saying, Teresa, it's Randy. Maybe you can.
So let's maybe figure out, I think, what it is you want to accomplish,
yeah.
and then I can
Right.
draft it however, to make it work however you want it to work.
Well,
This is drafted based on the county's ordinance, but it's within your purview to decide to
Right,
change that.
there's that list of other items
Right.
from other cities in the county and outside the county. And of course, there could be different flavors in Brisbane that aren't on that list either. And it's up to us to decide if we want to pursue a longer list of areas that are prohibited.
Right. And if we want to exempt the boats, and
Well-
that's something we can discuss. But it also does say, item C on page 11 of the ordinance. It said it includes Fisherman's Park, which I don't know where that is. Is
Well,
that
it's
like the fishing pier?
Fisherman's Park
No.
is the pier, isn't it? And-
no,
No,
Fisherman's-
sir, it's on Sierra Point Parkway. It's where the tubes go from the lagoon.
Sierra Point
Yeah.
Parkway, right?
It's where I think every person who is there 24 hours a day is smoking.
Yeah, probably.
It is. It's probably the most smoky place
Fishermen
in
are sitting there.
All
the
the
entire-
cigarette butts we picked up on
Yes.
that lagoon cleanup.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
Well, it says it specifically says marina, and the marina is the whole thing. That's the boat
Right.
and everything. So and the parking lots. So it just seems like, wow. I mean, it's no smoking in Brisbane at all,
Yes, it does. It's pretty much.
unless you own a
It does, and we hadn't discussed that, but I also forgot to note that I had added in my notes that some places I saw that were missing that I'd like to see included would be the park and ride lot, and the public lot where the Lions Club has their Christmas tree installation. Those are other public spaces that haven't been called out. I mean, maybe the Lions Club lot isn't used, but I could see the bus depot as a place that we would want to regulate, because we don't want people to be waiting for the bus and have to deal with the smoking. I think that's a public place that makes sense to have that restriction.
Yeah, I think that's probably what the intent of the ordinance is people being subjected to it, in a sense, and I'm not sure
Both of them.
all inclusive of like the marina, because a lot of the boaters are smokers down there, and it's
Right.
like, a guy sitting on his boat, he paid $200,000 for it, and smoking a cigar or something like that with a
Yeah.
whatever.
We could also say that the marina has a designated smoking area, just like the multi-unit housing, because
I don't know if that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Of course.
You want to go ahead? I just had a
No,
reaction.
of
Yeah,
course.
okay. No, we didn't really think about the marina, to be honest. So this is a new thought, and my initial reaction is that boats are kind of like single residences. That's kind of how I think about it anyway, just off the top of the head. So then it wouldn't be covered by the ordinance, as I would interpret what was intended. Because what we're trying to get at is smoke that's being imposed on other people against their will. And when you're in those individual boats, it's not as if you got walls that are adjacent to each other where the smoke is coming through, which is what happens in multi-unit residences. It's not going to happen on the marina, most probably.
Yeah, well, maybe
I don't
the county
know
has.
if there's any scientific studies of that, but it just strikes me as common sense that it probably wouldn't be that kind of a problem at the marina with all the separate boats and so forth. That's kind of my feeling about it. So I would think that the marina would not be a place where we'd want to impose this. That's kind of my gut feeling. On the other hand, when we start talking about sports fields, it all of a sudden dawned on me that the sports fields are really owned by the schools and not by the city. The city maintains them, but the city doesn't own them. And so you got all the soccer kids out there and everything, and they're playing in all those fields, and we don't really incorporate that because it's not city-owned, it's school-owned.
I'm not sure where it
And
says.
whether we can control that or not, I don't know. It's kind of a question, really. But it seems to me if I wanted to make sure that this applied, that's where I'd like to see it, because that's where the kids are. And the marina, I would say, that those are single residence boats. That's my cut on it anyway.
Where's it actually say sports fields?
No. That was one of the
doesn't.
things in the
That's the
county that
problem.
the county doesn't. That the county exempts, actually.
Oh, okay.
But other cities include,
So
like Foster City, I think. Am I right?
Sidewalk.
Yeah. Am I right about that? Yeah.
So state law does provide a prohibition to smoking in playgrounds and tot lots. I would need to look to see how broad that definition is, whether that would include a sports field that is owned or connected to a public school. We would need to look to see whether there's any state law on that, which is different than a sports field that the city may own, a municipal sports field.
I think also all the school districts
Well, we're talking
don't
about
allow smoking
BES,
on property.
BES Field, Lippman Field,
they're all
and Lippman tennis courts, really.
I
what we're talking about.
suspect that is all covered, but I can't confirm that sitting here.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't really investigate whether that's the case or not.
Those campuses are smoke-free.
I would think so.
So, yeah.
But what about the fields, though? That's what I'm.
Yeah.
It's on,
So if
it's
you
on
want to
the
go
campus,
running,
though.
you can smoke if you're on the field, not on the.
Well, I got a suggestion, and it's, with the marina scratched at, and Fisherman's Park, I would say scratched at, unless we're seeing a lot of cigarette butts going into the water. I don't know if that's
No,
the case.
That's what they do. They are the most disrespectful
Really? And
people anywhere.
maybe leave that in and at least give the police some kind of And how about the public parking areas in the marina? Because I'm not sure how it applies, like with, well, you're a member of the yacht club, how would it apply there,
Well, we don't allow smoking in the building.
Yeah, I know that, but if you go outside, you're on city-owned land.
And Madam Mayor, if I may add to that conversation, I think from my perspective as managing the marina, it would be helpful for staff to understand the council's desires for this ordinance in regards to 3 areas. One would be on the actual slips where the vessels are, and one would be along the entire perimeter of it, because even though it's not named as a park, I think many people would argue that the promenade grass area where we have picnic benches and entire BCDC strip is a de facto park. So
Well, it's part of the trail system.
Right.
I agree, yes, ma'am.
Right.
And so if we could distinguish what happens on the slips where people are leasing boat space and what the council's desires are along the walkway, the promenade, and the picnicking area, and that very, very large parking lot, that would be helpful for us in crafting the right language to get what you want to have accomplished here.
Yeah, I think smoking on someone's own boat, I agree with you, right, is someone's own single family type residence, so to speak. So, but other parts where you're walking along the dock itself, that you shouldn't be smoking that.
Well, it's a park.
So just do the slips then, basically.
Well, actually, I heard 2 things here, sorry, because I thought I heard Mr. Lentz say was that the individual slips would be okay, but that the gangways and the walkways themselves would not. So he parsed it out even one more level for me, which is fine. We want to do what you all want to do. We want to get it right.
That's your thing, but if you're, being on the slip is kind of like being on the trail, to me. Yeah, so.
On the gangways and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Most respectful smokers step off someone's boat before they smoke, just like you wouldn't
That's right,
step
I know.
away from
Yeah.
someone.
Right, yeah.
But what most respectful people and what we're trying to legislate against are, or for, are 2 different things. So.
I know. Well, we could have a very extensive laundry list of things if we want to keep on going. So, maybe it's better for you, Lori and Ray, to come up with some items.
And I'd be curious to know what other communities have done
I
that.
hadn't really thought about that.
I mean, I wonder if Ms. Scruggs has some experience with what other marina communities have done.
Not every city has a marina.
Well, a lot do, though.
South City does.
When the city of San Mateo passed their ordinance 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, there was a request from a resident to include the waterways, and they did include those. I think the discussion that you're having here this evening is based upon the fact that the city didn't already have prohibitions for smoking in certain public spaces, so they just don't exist at all in your code, and therefore now you have to decide which ones you include, where in other cities they would have been in their code for 20 plus years, and then they've just added other places.
Right.
So like no smoking in common areas of multi-unit residences has been in most cities' ordinances for 15, 20 years.
Right.
And so now they've just added the individual units. So in your city's case, the only tobacco ordinances you have was your tobacco retail permit program. So that's why this is trying to pick and choose which areas. So other cities would have done this years ago, and now Brisbane is doing that. So it is at the discretion of the council which areas you choose to cover, and I think that's what your Deputy of Public Works was saying, that you have to decide what it is you want to include.
Right.
Yeah, and because it's so late, I mean, I would prefer that it goes back to both of you at the subcommittee, and you come up with a list, and the next time that this comes back to us, because we have another reading of it, correct? This isn't a final. You're not. Is it for the final tonight?
No.
It's our first
right?
reading.
So we got another.
This is a first reading.
Just
Yeah.
the
Concern
first
is,
one.
though, that
So when it comes back, then you'll include that list. That then we can decide. Okay, yes, we agree with you, or no, we'll take off some.
But I think we have some other things to discuss in this too. But we
No,
do need to extend the meeting, and I have had a request from the public to not have meetings go till midnight, and I agree with that. So
I third it.
so I'll move to extend the meeting to, what else do we have here?
11 o'clock.
To 11 o'clock. Is there?
Okay, a second.
Yeah.
Okay. All in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to quickly comment on what some of my concerns are to see if this can go back to committee and some of those concerns can be made. I really think that we need to notify the homeowner associations and make sure that gets out to the HOAs. Many of our people who live in condos are not involved in city government, and they aren't aware of what we're doing here. And I do think that to make this effective, they should be made aware before we initiate it, not just that in a year you may need to sell your home and move somewhere else to comply with the law. And so I think it's very important. It's easier for a landlord to say your tenants aren't going to smoke if you don't want them to smoke there. It's much harder to instigate someone who owns their home. They can't usually just move. It's going to take, months, if not years, of planning to sell your home if this is not acceptable to you. So I think that we should have better notification to the HOAs and the other places that are affected by this. We have going door to door, you see how many multi-unit buildings we have here in Brisbane. And it's not going to be effective if we don't let people know what's happening. And I think that really needs to be done before we move ahead with reading the first.
About
ordinance.
31 in central Brisbane.
Well, going door to door, I think there's a bit more than that because I knocked on more of those doors.
In central Brisbane. I'm talking about,
Legal ones, but how many illegal ones we have that are common spaces?
Well, that's 800.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
800.
If you start walking behind people's houses to find their doorways, you find a lot of them. And so the other thing that I have concerns with is the medical marijuana complete exemption, really, because as Lori said, Dr. Liu said that he would never prescribe medical marijuana, and yet it's something that's legal in a smoking form. And so requiring someone to get
He wouldn't prescribe medical
Smoking.
marijuana delivered through smoking.
Correct. And he said that as a doctor he would never allow that, and that's the only way we would have an exemption for smoking medical marijuana. So it seems sort of like a double negative, and it seems a little bit, especially with the way the state is going with, we're expecting marijuana to be legalized as a recreational product, and it's not all refined. A lot of it is in its natural form that does get smoked. So I think that that's a little bit restrictive from my point of view.
So and let me just get you, just so I have clarification. So item number 2, where the county has an exemption in the
What page you on, Cliff?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Page 5.
5. The subcommittee has recommended that there be no exemption.
Right.
Because there are other ways to ingest marijuana.
Right.
So,
And
so you're saying
So
that,
I'm
that
not following.
that seems, especially with the vaporizing, I think that's too strict for, we're making a decision on a medical use.
but I don't know. Granted, I'm going off Dr. Liu's recommendation. It seems like there's other options to use marijuana for medical purposes. So I agree with the subcommittee's recommendation here. Just because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, just because it's going, or the state is looking at making it legalized for recreational use doesn't mean that we need to allow it in multi-unit housing. I mean, cigarettes are legal for recreational use. That's pretty much what they're used for. So I don't see the issue with restricting it.
I'm not necessarily ambivalent. I see what your point is, Terry. I certainly see, what you're saying in regards to that because it is a medical thing, and it's like what we're saying in here in the ordinance. Well, if you're going to smoke, you need a note from your doctor versus taking a pill, right?
Well, you need a specific note. I mean, right now for medical marijuana, you do need a note for your doctor.
Right.
And doctors are giving those out saying, yes, you can use medical marijuana. Now, whether they're legitimate doctors or not, I wouldn't even want to go there because that's not what we're here to decide.
Issue. Yeah.
But it is a whole different issue. Yeah. And I think it brings in more
I see what you're saying.
Issues.
It could be kind of complex, and I think that's what probably some of the other folks were talking about too. But I'm okay either way with it. So.
But yeah, I would want it to certainly to let the people who are really going to be affected by this know about the proposed ordinance so that it can be effective.
Yeah, I think we should have good lines of communication.
And number one is, it wouldn't have been too hard to send it out to the 3 homeowners associations. That would have covered 60% of the multi-units.
I agree with that.
I think we all agree with the much greater notification. I think we all agree with that.
Yeah.
So,
That's what we always want to do, and no reason why we shouldn't do it on this. But this is really going to affect people personally, so we should certainly notify all appropriate.
and if we're going to ban all traces of cigarette smoke or smoke, and smoke is smoke, we should ban barbecues too at all the parks because that's just as much smoke as cigarettes would be.
Okay.
Our call.
Well, actually, the Air Quality District has been looking into that.
Yeah.
Because it is a problem.
It is a problem.
Not only barbecues, but fireplaces, etc.
All right.
Anyway,
I think the subcommittee probably has a direction.
Yeah.
But did we talk about the vape shop issue? I don't think we've resolved that.
an emergency moratorium on vape shops.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to smoke it under this ordinance. Anywhere.
Today I was in Belmont, and I drove past one of those shops. I don't want it in Brisbane. I'd say we do that.
I don't think we have enough population to support that, just like we don't have enough population.
Yeah, well, look, it doesn't hurt to do the moratorium. I agree. I think we should.
I have no problem with an emergency moratorium on selling of.
But there's one item that the subcommittee, I guess, is going to explore. It's the last one, the county's disciplinary actions. I don't think that we should impose any additional.
We don't include that, right?
No.
No, but it's something that you said you're going to look at. Let's see.
If you wanted to,
you might want to. Yeah, you're going to look at what restrictions there might be with state and federal law and I guess employee representation. I would just scratch that and not even include it. is it?
It's not included.
Not in there.
That was explaining why it wasn't.
Right.
If the council at any point in the future wanted to include it, we would have to meet and confer.
Yes,
over
I know
it.
it's not in there, and I'm just
And you're-
hearing that. Yeah, I agree. It should not be in there. So don't spend any time exploring.
Okay.
Okay.
So second on the moratorium.
Okay.
Just from you're seconding a motion to have staff explore a moratorium.
No, just to do it.
Just to do
A
it.
1-year moratorium.
Yeah, I have no problem.
And then
with
and to authorize research in that interim.
You would you do not have that action in front of you to impose a moratorium at this time on vape shops. So you could bring that. That's
we
not
could bring back an emergency moratorium.
That's our direction.
Urgency order.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think that at this time we need to spend the additional 20 hours, looking at potential ordinance that
It's going to be a
That's
year
greater
before the
restriction, so-
state really.
Yeah, so I'm fine with the moratorium.
Okay.
Taking care of that.
So I think we're going to move on now to, in the limits of, in the respect for time, the local hazard mitigation plan. Do we need to?
Ma'am, that item requires absolutely no action on your part. I'm happy to bring it back to you at a later date. I'm happy to let you just have seen that you've read it, or I'm happy to discuss it as long as you'd like.
I'm assuming that the public outreach survey, since it already went out, this is what the county
yes,
is
ma'am,
requiring us to do to
Absolutely,
make
ma'am.
sure we've reached out to our
Absolutely,
residents.
ma'am. Part of our required outreach, and we had it available today in the park. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions for staff? This is informational only.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Just one question. Have
Sir.
you brought in the community volunteers into this process
The
specifically?
certs?
Not at this point, no, sir. This is the update of a local hazard mitigation plan really doesn't involve the community emergency response team. It's different. It's responding to the natural disasters and how the city and overall responds to them and mitigates them. So it's not necessarily your CERT team. It's more strengthening water tanks, preparing for, how we're going to deal with buildings that have fallen down, that sort of thing. It's a little lengthier.
Okay.
I mean, they're always a part of our consideration, but they're not part of this. They're not part of the LHMP.
Yeah, just didn't see any reference to them. That's why.
No. The only thing we do at the end is we do try and drag people in and say if you're interested, or a couple of the questions at the end are you aware of SMC Alert? Would you sign up?
Right.
What would be the best way to get you information? But it's not trying to focus on them, but it's giving people who are interested, and then we haven't captured under that net yet the opportunity.
And are we on a time constraint on item D for the?
Yes, ma'am, we are. But I can make it really easy for you.
Okay, I'll make it easier. Motion to approve.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
All those in favor?
Well, I have a couple of questions. I think we should at least discuss it a little, please, Madam Mayor.
I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah.
I was wondering why we.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of it, but of course, I think I just wanted to ask a couple of questions in terms of what's included here.
Sure, of course, sir.
And the information there on the complete streets does not include, as I read it, the most recent approved Safe Streets to School, and I was wondering why that was not there. Also, we have a number of trail maps that have been approved by the city that were created through open space and Parks and Rec and so forth that have already been approved as trail maps for the city, including all the different trails that we have, and those are officially approved by the city, but there's no reference to them here. So I guess I wanted to bring those particular kinds of things up to make sure that if we're going to hire a consultant, that they're aware of all these things that already exist that have been approved by the council, the complete streets, the safe routes to school. That's pretty recent, and I know we have a pretty elaborate trail map, because I remember working on that when I was on the Open Space and Ecology Committee, and it actually was initiated
Right,
by
exactly.
the Park and Rec Commission, and there's no reference to that here. There's a couple of references to trails, but there's no reference to things that the city has already done that would be a place to start, rather than, okay, so where do we begin?
Right, and those are both items that we would provide to them as part of their introduction as they come in and meet with staff and have the kickoff meeting, because there's other items that are referenced in there as well specifically that we're going to provide to them, a map that shows where the existing sidewalks are and such.
Right.
So that would be part of the background material that we'll provide to the consultant. I think mostly what we provided in there, and I think where you're referencing that from is in the request for proposals, and most of the request for proposals, the illustrative material that was attached to it as an appendix was grant applications that had previously been completed.
Right.
So that's why the two items you're referencing weren't grant applications, but they are acknowledged as completed work products. So we'll definitely make sure the consultant gets those.
I just wanted to make sure, since I didn't see written reference to it.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much for bringing that up.
Appreciate that response.
Any other discussion?
That's all.
I had a question. So I had asked staff about whether the optional the optional tasks were included to give us a sense of what the cost would be and to decide whether we want to include those. And I just see now that there is a schedule for the design fee. I hadn't noticed that earlier. So when would the time be for us to decide whether or not to include these optional tasks? Would that be now or at a later date?
The recommendation before you, ma'am, is that you only do the base task. Staff is not recommending any of the
Okay.
optional tasks as necessary or appropriate.
Okay. And then my other question was about how this would work in conjunction with the Parkside specific plan, because it seems like some of the same questions will be asked about, how are the streets being used for different modes of transportation and for pedestrian access. So I'm wondering what staff's recommendation is in terms of timing, which one would be more helpful to go first or concurrently?
I don't think one really holds up the other. Certainly the Parkside plan is a very localized, very specific planning area within the city, and the intent of the pedestrian and the bike master plan is to be a much larger view. So I envision that this is going to kick off this item before you tonight and start moving quickly, and either one of them can be modified. If Parkside happens to finish before it, that strikes me as a little bit of a not likely scenario. I can't imagine that Parkside is done and we redo all the zoning and get all that passed through the council before we finish a bike and ped master plan. But so I'm envisioning that they're going to be occurring somewhat simultaneously. And then when the bike and ped master plan is done, if the council does go through and you do make some zoning changes and such based on the Parkside study, then that could be incorporated into an update bike ped master plan. Because it's just a small piece of it that's fitting into a larger piece. So we can change that to make sure that we don't have trails that we don't have a bridge that goes to nowhere, if you will. We have a bike trail that actually connects to a bike trail and lets you continue.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So you made a motion, and
Somebody seconded it. Yeah,
You
let's do it,
second?
Yeah.
We voted on it, really.
all
Already.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. City managers, let's extend the meeting another 10 minutes.
5.
Second.
Thank you.
It's up to the council, but the only other item that's really time sensitive on the agenda is the setting of is item 11B, the setting of the council special meeting.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said the only other time-sensitive item on your agenda tonight is item 11B, which is establishing the date for the special council meeting.
Okay. For October 26th.
I won't be here.
I think, Clark's not going to be here, so we were thinking maybe the 27th. That's a Tuesday. Council chambers is available.
October
So,
7th.
That seems to work.
okay,
I'm free.
yeah, I can do it.
I think I can.
I can make the
You're back, Clark?
27th.
You
Yeah.
can do 27th?
I'll be back the 27th.
Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to say on this that, you know, the subcommittee had a, you know, preliminary report from the consultant, and it's really quite interesting to hear the consultant present the findings and interpret them and do the co-correlations and all that kind of thing. And so, you know, it'll be very interesting presentation, I think. So it's worth the time to do it. And the community, I think, will be quite interested as well.
And will the raw data be posted on the city's website in
I'm going to ask
advance?
that too.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay. So what would you say that again, so everybody knows?
The raw data will be uploaded on the city's website tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
So people can see the raw numbers, but the interpretations and all the other kind of information that only the consultant is going to be able to go through and present, that'll be available on the 27th. And I think the idea was that, you know, that would also make it, of course, the raw data will be available to the Planning Commission like everybody else, but they were eager to get that information as well.
They're going to get a special email tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
I have a question for Clay. Ray and I, we had our sustainability subcommittee meeting a few days ago. Andrea was hoping to finalize the document. It was very minor changes. Has she brought back the final document, Clay?
I haven't seen anything yet, but we were aiming, I believe, for the November 5th meeting.
First meeting in November.
All right. I was just thinking if it was available, you know, then we could perhaps include the final council approval at this meeting, but it sounds like it's not going to be ready.
I don't have it at this point.
She wasn't given those instructions, so.
Right.
I know she wanted to bang it out pretty quick.
Yeah, so we'll see. Well, we'll see, yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see.
So on written communications, there was a notice of election of president and vice president for the ABAG, and that election has been canceled because there was only one applicant, so they are considered appointed. So we don't need to worry about voting on that. And then there was also a letter from Kamala Harris, the Attorney General, about the proposed changes in control and governance of Daughters of Charity Health Systems, also known as Seton. And they are having a public meeting on tomorrow, October 16th at 9 a.m. and at both Half Moon Bay and in Lake Merced and Daly City.
Yeah.
So they wanted to notify us of that.
We've had a couple of, just quickly, a couple of written communications about the efforts of the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, MTC, to basically take the planning staff from ABAG in a somewhat
hostile takeover.
Yeah, hostile takeover, exactly. And that was kind of an interesting development that one regional organization would, you know, really mount an attack on another regional organization. And I don't know how that's going to get resolved, but that whole thing is a demonstration of some kind of regional politics that I don't fully understand, but it's a little distressing that it's going on that way.
Yeah, yeah. And the Seton Medical hearing that's tomorrow, I will be there, and the Daughters of Charity have asked me to speak at that hearing. Of course, I won't be speaking as about the council, but I'll be speaking as an individual at that hearing.
And then I also had a letter from Dolores Gomez speaking to the problem of late meetings and that we need to make sure that we do the important work earlier in the meeting than later. And duly noted, and we will do our best. And I do apologize for the extremely late meeting that we had last time. That was my error in scheduling. So with that, it brings us to oral communications.
Could I just ask one thing? I'm sorry to delay meeting, but it's possible that several of the people here were waiting for Clay's report on transportation issues. Am I right about that? Yeah. And that's going to be also pretty quick, I would think. And,
Okay.
yeah, I would hope that we can do that. It's on the agenda.
It's going to have to be quick because my voice is going on me, so I'm going to do this very quickly. The mayor did ask me to put together a short report on a couple of items relative to transportation issues and specifically to potential rail yard studies. There are two studies, I think, as the council is aware. The first one is the relocation or potential relocation of the Caltrain rail yard at 4th and King in San Francisco. This is part of a study that's its official name is the Rail Yard Alternatives and I-280 Boulevard Feasibility Study. This is essentially an effort by San Francisco to revitalize that what is currently the terminus of the Caltrain operation. I've given you some time frames in there that they have provided to us in their study. They are looking at a location in Brisbane, amongst other locations, including locations in San Francisco. And as you can see, the time or the planning time period there is into 2016 for an alternative study, another 12 to 18 months for environmental work, and then 18 months to 5 years before actual project would be ready. This is one of those odd situations where San Francisco as a city is doing this planning. Of course, it's a Caltrain station, and they are aware of it. I wouldn't even consider them to be participants in it. They're simply aware of it at this point. The other study, or other issue, I should say, not really a study at this point, is the high-speed rail yard or high-speed rail. And there is a meeting that, well, they've been having a series of meetings up and down the peninsula. They did meet with city staff about a month ago and outlined for us that they would be looking at the Brisbane Baylands, although they have not identified where on the Baylands, where they would, for a potential rail yard. They're looking at they have two segments of study. One is a San Francisco to San Jose segment, and then another segment is a San Jose to Merced segment. In the San Jose to Merced segment, they're looking at some area in Gilroy. These are not necessarily mutually exclusive. They could potentially work in tandem. It could be one or the other. It could be different combinations. At this point, I cannot stress enough how early in the process this is, even though this has been an issue that has been discussed in the past. At this point, they were not able to identify the number of acres, types of activities, a specific location, or even a kind of even fundamental understanding of the land out there. However, there is a process that on a city manager and public works director level that we will be meeting with high-speed rail project coordinators from the northern part of the project. I think we have a meeting next week, and we will be meeting with them periodically, more for communication purposes and just kind of be updated on what the status of their process is. Their written materials indicated that summer of 2017 would be the time that they would anticipate their EIR work on these two segments to be done. That's almost 2 years from now. I understand anecdotally that schedule has already slipped, and that's not surprising that it slipped at late 2017 or probably into 2018. I frankly wouldn't be surprised if it didn't slip to 2020 or something. Only because there's just a tremendous amount of work to be done, and they are really at the early stages in this process. So that's my report, my update, and I hopefully going into the future we're going to have more periodic meetings with high-speed rail. We have kind of, I think, developed a little better communication with the city and county of San Francisco over what their activities are, so that we can provide timely information to the council and to the Brisbane community on the status of these various studies.
I have one question for you on that. if I may, and that is with the speaking about high-speed rail, is that also in conjunction with the Caltrain electrification, or is that meeting, are you doing separate meetings with the Caltrain electrification?
I would describe it basically as separate at this point.
But their time frame for Caltrain is much quicker,
For
isn't it?
the electrification is, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, Caltrain electrification is supposed to happen hopefully by 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
So Caltrain's electrification process is a large part of it is being funded by high-speed rail. So, and the reason I know this is because I'm on the LPMG advisory group to the JPB in regards to Caltrain electrification. Representatives from high-speed rail came to our last meeting, and they talked about various aspects of having high-speed rail along the corridor. Of course, all along that corridor, there's, different cities have different issues. Our issue is, of course, the rail yard. And they did indicate that it's their preferred site, but they didn't have any plans, and there's really nothing for us to see in regards to what they might propose out there. They also talked about Gilroy as being an alternative location. And this is something we've talked about lots of times. And I give you guys updates on what's happening, and we've talked about high-speed rail and their desires to have the rail yard out in the Baylands. I have been watching some of the meetings, the Planning Commission meetings, and talk about the letter from Mayor Lee and his comments. And Mayor Lee's comments are just as powerful, or they're the same as anyone else from Brisbane who's submitted comments to the draft EIR. There's no additional weight from Mayor Lee. In fact, Mayor Lee probably didn't even write the letter. It came from his staff. As Clay has mentioned, San Francisco wants to put the 4th and King rail yard into Brisbane. They want to move Brisbane's train station into San Francisco, and they want to see high-speed rail have their yard in Brisbane. And I think Mayor Lee should butt out on Brisbane's land use policy decisions.
The problem with the whole thing is they're designing the color of the bathroom tile without looking at the whole project, and it's just stupid. So, we're wasting a lot of time. Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Actually, I think that we...
Can I just clarify one point? Because people are listening. With regards to the 4th and King relocation, they are also looking at sites within San Francisco. So it's not exclusively Brisbane.
Yes.
Okay. So we do have oral communications number 2, if there's any members of the public that would like to speak. And with that, I would move to close in memory of Cy Boligoff and Errol Ham Marshall.
Errol Ham Marshall, yeah.
And
Yes, second.
Okay, sounds good.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.